I want to check in with Harry Broadman. He's a former assistant trade representative under U.S. President Bill Clinton. He's now managing director of the Berkeley Research Group. Has been listening in, and thank you for being with us, Harry. And I guess I want to start with the significance of this deal, and by that I mean, some of this is self-imposed. So there are tariffs that remain in place that weren't in place before. So you can argue that we're fixing a problem we created ourselves. However, in the bigger, broader context of the Chinese-U.S. trade relationship, was this necessary? And are we now getting to a place where important issues will begin to get resolved?
Well, I think not. I mean, I think the biggest part of this deal is the procurement by the Chinese of U.S. manufacturing goods, services, energy, and then agriculture. Actually, agriculture is actually the smallest part of the amount of purchases that China will be making from the United States. But other than that, the text, at least as I've seen, with respect to the core structural issues, that is on forced technology transfer, on subsidies to state-owned enterprises, protection of intellectual property and trade secrets, there's not much here. And it doesn't look like a lot different from other trade agreements with China that previous administrations have started. And I think you said it very well at the outset that we basically brought ourselves to the ledge, and now we're bringing ourselves back from the ledge back to where we sort of started from, but still tariffs will remain in place at least through November.
There has been, even for those through all of this, the kind of the pro-trade folks among us, and there are many in this day and age, who will have said that tariffs are always bad. They hurt everybody, but they certainly hurt the country that imposes them. There's been acknowledgement that China can be a bad actor on trade, and that there were some very specific issues that we do need to resolve. Were those irritants that existed in your day, and that people would say things like IP theft, this sort of enforced sharing of technologies, the sort of bullying that China is capable of because of its size and importance? Is it important to really go to the wall over those issues?
Well, I think if you believe in a multilateral rule-based system of trade for the globe, of which China signed on in 2001, and if you look at the commitments that China made with respect to its accession to the WTO in that year, it really is not living up to those legal commitments. And so my view is that largely those commitments have not been nailed down through this negotiation, nor frankly in previous administrations. And the rub is not so much that I think China is bullying other countries, it's that they are not adhering to a legal agreement that they signed up to. And the problem, I think, that we have gotten ourselves into is by taking them on bilaterally as opposed to multilaterally with other WTO members.
One of the big issues, obviously, that this has caused is for businesses trying to understand the landscape, and for some, quite literally, the cost of doing business, which has changed with one tariff and another, with penalizing tariffs that come and go. Just in terms of clarity here, we've heard talk of permanently shifting supply chains and this kind of two-track world, right? Two different technology systems. Is that a reality, do you think? Is that where this goes? Or can we kind of pull it back to a system where actually we're quite integrated and globalized?
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the concept of decoupling, which has begun to take a life of its own in the last several months, particularly coming out of Washington. I think if you look at issues like Huawei and technology-driven industries, I do think, at least for the moment, Washington is keen to try to decouple. I happen to think that that's not going to succeed because I think there is some inertia in these supply chains. And if you think about the notion of a world with two technology standards, think back to the days of when we had VHS and Betamax. In the end, the market is going to work, and there's going to be one technology standard that will prevail. It's not going to happen immediately, but I think we're right now in the middle of that sort of ferment in the markets and in the technologies. The difference, I think, relative to the VHS issues is now we're dealing with things that really affect national security, not just, how you're going to watch your videos. So I think we're just at the beginning of that discussion. And I do not think that Washington is going to succeed and should focus on more important things with respect to opening up the Chinese economy and adhering to as I said before, the legal obligations that China signed on to. And decoupling will probably take care of itself. And it's not clear, frankly, that today, where, as you referenced, China is the global factory, over time, other countries are going to begin to edge out China, in a couple of decades' time. But I think the folks in the driver's seat are businesses, and making decisions about altering supply chains on the margin. Yes, that could happen as a result of tariffs, but these are big sunk investments, and it would take a lot to really disturb and change those supply chains in a very fundamental way. And I don't think we're at that point yet. We could be, but we're not there now.
All right, well, an unfolding story. We appreciate your perspective on it and hope to talk to you again. Harry Broadman, former U.S. President Bill Clinton's assistant trade rep, director of the Berkeley Research Group. Our thanks.